Kennywood's Phantom's Revenge and Cedar Point's Millennium Force are both really good steel roller coasters. Kennywood is my home park, so I get to visit a lot and ride the Phantom a lot during my visits. But I switched it up on Saturday, July 20th, 2024, and went to Cedar Point for the first time in 7 years. And not important to the story, but it was also my birthday 4 days prior on July 16th. And I got my first ride and only ride on Millennium Force. Why am I trying to battle it out with Phantom when Phantom is nothing like Millennium Force? Well, you'd be surprised because both rides are unique in many different ways. So let's get right into this little battle and let's see what the better coaster actually is here. There will be 15 different categories: height, speed, drops, intensity, airtime, smoothness, trains and restraints, capacity, queue experience, photo opportunities on ride, theming and scenery, overall experience, historical significance, fan base and popularity, duration. If a ride wins in a category, it will receive 1 point. It will not and cannot end in a tie. So let's get started with the first category, height. The Phantom's Revenge has a height of 160 feet. On the other hand, Millennium Force has a height of 310 feet. The obvious winner here is Millennium Force for this category. Millennium Force was known as the first Giga coaster when it opened up back in 2000. Roller coasters that exceed 300 feet are known as Giga coasters. The Phantom's Revenge is known as a hypercoaster despite only being 160 feet. A hypercoaster is any coaster that exceeds 200 feet. The Phantom actually has a drop of 232 feet into the ravine below, which categorizes it as a hypercoaster, which this leads into the next category, which is drops. As I said before, the Phantom has a hypercoaster drop at 232 feet, but Millennium Force is still a bigger drop at 300 feet, which makes that win this category, the drops category. Millennium Force drops you 300 feet from the first drop at an 80-degree angle. Phantom's Revenge, on the other hand, has the second drop as its biggest drop. Phantom drops you 232 feet at a 52-degree angle into the ravine through Thunderbolt at a max speed of 85 miles per hour. That also leads us to our next category, speed. Millennium Force is known for its speed at 93 miles per hour, which also makes it an obvious winner for the speed category. Wow, the Phantom is really getting blown away. Stay tuned to see who wins. But back to the battle. Next, we got intensity. Millennium Force does have a max G-force at 4.5, which is most intense at that first turn. Many riders are known to black out at this part of the ride due to how intense it actually is. The Phantom, on the other hand, has a max G-force of 3.5. That's still very intense. Riders say that it's most intense when it's going down through the Thunderbolt and into the first turnaround. Although the number is higher for Millennium Force, I will still give it to the Phantom due to the intense bunny hills at the end of the ride. Why I say this is because Millennium Force is very drawn out. There's no sudden movements like Phantom has. It's very calm. It's intense, but it's calm. There's no jerkiness like Maverick. And I don't mean jerky in a rough way, I just mean jerky as in there's nothing sudden. As for Phantom, you're going up and down, slamming back into your seat, going up, hitting your restraint. There's a lot going on. So I believe Phantom should win that round, and it will in my book. Moving on, airtime. Now obviously we know who's going to win this one. The king of airtime is the Phantom's Revenge. Now, will it win? Yes, absolutely it'll win. Now, listen, Millennium Force is known for its speed. You really don't get any airtime on Millennium Force because of the restraints. Now with Phantom, it's very wide open. And as I said before, the Phantom is very, very, very sudden. You go up, you go down, you're up, down, back and forth, hitting your restraint, down in your seat. There's so much to it. Millennium Force, you don't really find that on that ride. It's more for the speed. You don't go for the airtime, you go for the speed. So obviously that's why the winner of airtime is the Phantom's Revenge, because that is obviously the king of airtime. I don't think there's any other coaster out there that has airtime like Phantom. Now let's move on to smoothness. Both rides are extremely smooth. None of them are jerky, there's no rough parts, I guess you could say. Now, if we were talking about Steel Phantom back in the 90s, it would be a completely different story. But today, both rides are very smooth. The only reason why I am going to say Millennium Force is more smooth is because some people find the bunny hills on Phantom's Revenge very rough. They don't like the sudden movements, it's uncomfortable for them. I understand it. People who ride the Phantom a lot and get used to it, they might say, maybe it's not painful, maybe it's not uncomfortable, but there's some people who come off Phantom and say, my back hurts, I don't want to ride that again. I hear many people say that. And initially, I thought that too. But you know what I tell them? I tell them, put your hands up, you'll love it. People told me that too. And guess what? I loved it. Now just put your hands up. Once you get used to banging around, going up against your restraint, slamming back down, you'll love it. There's not one moment like that on Millennium Force, mainly because the restraints are very restrictive. It's very tight to your body, you're not going anywhere. The ride layout's already made, very drawn out, there's nothing sudden, so obviously that's why I'm giving it the winner here, for the smoothness category. Next is trains and restraints. Millennium Force is known for its T-bar restrictive restraints. The ride uses hydraulics, unlike the Phantom. You know the click 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 when you pull down your restraint on the Phantom? Well, those are ratchet restraints. Those restraints you can move up and down just by about an inch where it locks. It's made up of mini teeth, and where the restraint locks is where it goes. So that's why you can move it up and down just a little bit. As for Millennium Force, you can't move it at all. Millennium Force has very restrictive restraints. As for the Phantom, it's not restrictive at all. It keeps you in, but it also allows for some room and also a ton of airtime, which is also why the Phantom wins for restraints and the train. The train also plays a factor in capacity, how fast operations go, which leads to the next category, which, you guessed it, it's capacity. Millennium Force has 3 36-rider trains. Phantom's Revenge has 2 28-rider trains. Phantom has a capacity of about 1,400 riders an hour, and Millennium Force has a capacity of about 1,300 riders an hour. Keep in mind that only one train can go out through the course at once, at a time. That goes for both rides. And with Millennium Force having 3 trains and Phantom having 2, the one extra train can slow down operations just a little bit. You might think it might make it faster, but it actually slows it down just a little bit. So Phantom wins this one. Now let's move on to the waiting experience, which is when you're waiting in line. Of course, this is going to be boring. Who wants to wait in line? But when you're waiting in line, you want to be entertained. Is there anything to look at? For Phantom, you really don't have nothing until you're at the bridge section of the line. Millennium Force, you get to see the coaster around you. And when you get near the station and in the station, you get this futuristic theme and the music playing, the iconic Millennium Force music. Which that plays in the station, and it's very nice. It fits the futuristic theme. It's a very nice touch, especially when you're waiting in a very long line. For the Phantom, you really just have the 2 Phantoms, one at the front entrance, then the one before you enter the station. That's it. You don't have no music, don't have nothing. Now, that's why that when you're waiting in line for the Millennium Force, it's superior to the Phantom. That's why Millennium Force wins this category, and I was talking a lot about theming. For the theming and scenery category, the Phantom wins this one, mainly because you go down a big ravine. Do you do that with Millennium Force? You don't. So that's why it wins that one. Did you also know there was a theme song that goes along with Phantom also? Well, you probably didn't because they never play it. Now, if they had this or some kind of music playing the station for Phantom, it would be a little bit better. There's no really theming for Phantom, but the scenery is great, so that's why it wins this category. What other coaster goes down a ravine and straight through another coaster? Exactly. The next category is photo opportunities on ride. Phantom has a camera just at the final bunny hill of the ride, and Millennium Force has the camera in one of the tunnels. I personally think the Phantom one is way cooler. You're out of your seat, having your hands up. It seems cooler, so that's why Phantom will win this one. Next category is overall experience. Now, this one, Millennium Force, you go down the drop, you got the speed, you're going around. There's not really much to it other than speed. This ride is all about speed. The Phantom, on the other hand, is all about airtime. There's a lot more going on with Phantom. You're out of your seat, you're going back down into your seat, you're doing a lot. And I keep describing Millennium Force as drawn out because there's no sudden movements. I think the sudden movements keep the ride alive. Millennium Force, it's about speed. There's no airtime moments, at least not in the way that Phantom does it, and that's mainly because of the restraints. So that's why Phantom wins this category. Next, we got historical significance. Now, Millennium Force was the first giga coaster in the world, exceeding 300 feet. It was also the fastest coaster at the time when it opened up, back in 2000. What makes the Phantom unique is that it was a conversion of the old coaster Steel Phantom. They took out the loops of it. It was an aero looper coaster, basically very jerky, rough. It opened in 1991, and 10 years later, it opened back up as the Phantom's Revenge as we know it today. They replaced the loops with the airtime hills. So yeah, sure, Millennium Force was the first giga coaster. It was a huge thing, but I will say the Phantom does have a bigger historical significance, which makes that win the category. The next one is fan base and popularity. Cedar Point in general is a very big park. A lot more people go there per day than Kennywood, so I'm going to give it to Millennium Force just because of that factor. Millennium Force has also won 10 Golden Ticket Awards, which is a huge thing. As for the Phantom, it really hasn't won nothing that big, but it also was ranked in the top 5 of the USA Today's top 10 roller coasters in the last few years. So the obvious winner here is the Millennium Force. And for our next category, we got duration. Millennium Force has a ride time of 2 minutes and 20 seconds, and the Phantom has a duration of 1 minute and 57 seconds, which the obvious winner is Millennium Force. A good majority of the Phantom's ride time is spent on the lift hill, about a minute of it. Millennium Force, on the other hand, it goes up the lift hill really fast, so a lot more of that time is actually the ride time. You can thank the cable lift on Millennium Force for shooting it up the lift hill. As for Phantom, it's the traditional aero lift hill, which instead of a cable, it's a chain. Intamin, the manufacturer of Millennium Force, was known for using cable lift hills back then, which are superior to the traditional chain lifts that you would see on aero coasters, which is what the manufacturer of the Steel Phantom was. And their chain lifts, specifically aero coasters, are very well known for their unique sound of the anti-rollback system, which that's the click-clack you hear when you go up a roller coaster. It's so you don't roll back. Cable lift hills are superior for speed to get up there quickly, but they can make it a maintenance nightmare. Even then, Phantom's Revenge has a 3,200 foot long track, and Millennium Force has a 6,595 foot long track, which is more than double of the Phantom's track length, which is why that Millennium Force wins the duration. And now the duration category is out of the way, and all 15 have been done, which means who wins? We'll look up top of the scoreboard, and you see the Phantom's Revenge actually wins. Let me know in the comments down below who you thought was going to win, and let me know which coaster you like better. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications for more content like this. I post tons of other coaster content just like this that you will not want to miss. So, subscribe. Why not? And make sure to go join my Discord server down below. I have it linked down in the description down below. or you can look on your screen currently. This is the code. Use this code to join. Anyway, I thank you all for watching. Have a great day. Let's ride.